Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Madison channel. I am Madison, and today we have our second installment of our Halloween spectacular special October content, which is the original Purge movie. So if you're excited about that, please stick around, and we're gonna do a full sociological commentary breakdown on that shit. So get excited. If you're new here, my name is Madison. Hi, hello, how are you? I do BIPOC true crime stories. I do documentary reactions, show reactions, and sociological commentary for all of the above. So if that sounds interesting to you, please stick around, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification, and like and comment the video. And if you are returning, I love you very much. Thank you for coming back. This is part 2 of our 5-part Purge series for October, so I hope you guys are excited. Again, if you're returning, like, comment on the video, interact with the content, love. It helps it in the algorithm. And for both y'all, new and old, you had better watch my ads. Watch my ads. Your girl's newly monetized, girl. Watch them ads. Anyway, mwah. Let's get into it. So as I explained in my video last week, I am doing an October series, specifically doing and detailing, breaking down the Purge series. So we're doing all 5 movies, and I'm doing them in the order of the Rotten Tomatoes recommendation. So I started with the 2018 prequel, and now we're going to the actual first Purge movie that was made in 2013, and then we'll go through the list accordingly. So now we are on technically the second installment, but this is the first Purge movie ever made, and I have to tell you guys, I loved it. I loved every second of it. It was amazing. It was well done, and we're gonna get into all my opinions later. But yeah, for those wondering, I will be back on my normal true crime content in November. I just feel like October, spooky season, I don't want to exploit people's stories for spooky season, so we're going to digest and dissect the fantastical world of the Purge cinematic universe, and we are going to, do some sociological commentary with the Purge movies and discuss that instead of focusing on someone's real actual life. So yeah, let me see what else. Again, I want to shout out my girl Mia. She's the one that suggested I do this. She also loves the Purge movie, so love you, bitch. Thank you for the idea. And yeah. Also, in my description box down below, all my socials are there, my TikTok, my Instagram, all of those things. Follow them, hit them, follow me on all of them. I also have my Amazon storefront where I have my sister's dream journal, so check that out as well. But without further ado, let's get into the breakdown. I just want to quickly shout out my sister and this absolutely gorgeous dream journal. It is a 12-week guided dream journal that has amazing prompts. It is absolutely super comprehensive to use and super high quality. Highly, highly recommend it. If you're interested in this, hit my Amazon storefront link in the bio so you can purchase it and try it out. Hope you love it.
This is not a test. This is your emergency broadcast system announcing the commencement of the annual purge sanctioned by the U.S. government. Weapons of Class 4 and lower have been authorized for use during the purge. All other weapons are restricted. Government officials of ranking 10 have been granted immunity from the purge and shall not be harmed. Commencing at the siren, any and all crime, including murder, will be legal for 12 continuous hours. Police, fire, and emergency medical services will be unavailable until tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. when the purge concludes. Blessed be our new founding fathers and America, a nation reborn. May God be with you all.
So we're going to do a similar format to the last video where I basically kind of do the cast family tree where I tell you who's who in the cast of the movie, and then we go into a summary, a very quick summary, off the top, off the dome. It's not going to be beat by beat, but it's going to be as much as I can remember off the dome. And then we're going to go into my sociological commentary. So let's get started. So the first Purge movie, not the first Purge, the Purge movie, the 2013 version of the Purge movie really centers around a single family. The other Purge movie we saw last week is more about society and race relations and class, and it's about a whole community. This is centered around a singular family, and if we were looking on the other side of the have-nots last week, we are looking at the haves this week. So think about the quintessential American dream, American white family. That is who we are focusing on in this movie. And it was interesting because there was some conversation about race and class in this movie that I didn't necessarily pick up on the first time I saw the Purge movie in 2013. But this movie's been woke, y'all. This series has been fucking woke. This cinematic universe has been that shit. So we're gonna get into that, of course, but here is the breakdown of who's who in the movie. First and foremost, we have the dad, who is James Sandin. So James Sandin is a dad. He is where a lot of this is centered. He I think works or owns a security system company that specializes in home security for the Purge. So, and he's very successful. He's really the nucleus of this family. This is where a lot of it is centered. Very successful white man, typical white man, played by Ethan Hawke, who I actually really like. But yeah, then we have the wife, or the mom as well, who's Mary Sandin. And Mary is played by the woman that plays Cersei from Game of Thrones, which is so weird. I don't know when Game of Thrones started. I think it was going in 2013, so it's just kind of silly that, like, she was in the first Purge or the first Purge movie ever made. But she's a mom. Seems like she's a stay-at-home mom, cares about her kids. You know, her character isn't super fleshed out. She's really just an extension of the dad or of the kids, depending on who she's talking about or defending. So I think they could have fleshed out her characterization as a mother a little bit more. But stay-at-home mom of a successful husband, da-da-da-da-da. Next, we have Zoe Sandin, who is the oldest sister, the oldest child of the Sandins. And she is like the obnoxious teenage girl trope in all horror movies and all coming-of-age movies, all of that, you know. Dating an older guy, rebellious, lots of eye rolling, lots of sass, lots of that, you know, just like, I'm gonna be miserable alone in my room while I text, like that kind of energy. Kind of annoyed by her, but the girl who played her did a pretty damn good job. And yeah, she's pretty, her story, we'll get into her story in a minute because it's kind of crazy. But yeah, think classic teenage daughter trope. Then we have the youngest brother, and there's only one younger brother, Charlie Sandin. And Charlie Sandin is like very odd. They introduce him as like this kind of antisocial, weird, pale kid that like hides around the house. He has this like machine that he rigged that has like a weird burnt up baby doll attached to a camera, attached to some sort of like car that he can remote control around the house, and he scares people with it. It's like giving classic annoying younger brother, but in this case it's not like the annoying like pranking one, it's more of the annoying like really strange one. And I feel like the parents were like particularly concerned about his socialization. There's a lot of things that were hinted around in terms of his personality, but they didn't flesh that out a lot either. He just is a strange child a little bit, a little socially awkward. So yeah, those are the Sandins, and this is who the entire story revolves around. Now we'll introduce the other subplot characters, and then we'll get into the summary. Okay, so next we have Henry, who's Zoe's boyfriend, who's older, and it is well established early on that Zoe's dad does not like the fact that she's dating Henry. He is 18. She is younger than that. I don't know if she's 16 or 17 or something, but she's clearly younger than 18. And the dad doesn't like Henry for dating her. Henry is like just a classic kind of boy next door-y white boyfriend. Kind of creepy when you know, with my 26-year-old eyes, like, you're older, she's younger, like, it seems like they're in love as much as in love they can be, but it's clear that there's a lot of tension in the family regarding Zoe and her boyfriend and this relationship because her dad does not approve, and that comes up later. So there's Mr. and Mrs. Fennin, and they are just neighbors in this gated community. Mind you, this takes place in like a very elite gated community. It seems like somewhere in Los Angeles. It's giving that kind of vibe. Very exclusive, very expensive. People are wealthy here. And so Mr. and Mrs. Fennin are just neighbors in the community, and they are people who every year host a purge party where they host people and they watch the purge and stuff like that. You see the wife, Mrs. Fennin, talk to Mary, the mom, in this weird interaction where she gives her cookies, and she kind of is like weird towards her. You can tell that Mary doesn't really like mingle with these women or the people in this community that much, which is interesting. But she kind of points out the fact that the Sandin family did really well selling home security systems this year, and that comes up later as well. Then we have Mr. and Mrs. Halverson, which is an interracial couple with a black wife, and they come up, and they're also neighbors in the neighborhood. It seems like they're friends with the Fennin family, and they pull up when Mary's talking to Grace, and they kind of do this weird, like, you can tell it's like this fakeness, this fake suburban, like, oh, nice to see you, do, like, nice nasty kind of conversation. Pretty interesting. They come back later. Then last but not least is the singular black guy in this movie, and he is unnamed. We'll call him the stranger, the unnamed stranger, and we'll get into his story a little bit as well, but he is the only black man in this movie. Of course, there's obviously Mrs. Halverson, but she's married to this wealthy white guy or whatever, but he's a black man in this movie. He's a victim. We'll get into his story as we do the summary. But those are basically the most important people in the movie. Let's get into the summary. Okay, so most of this is going to be off the top of my dome. I just watched it, so it's fresh in my mind. So we are going to kill it. Okay, so it opens up with text on the screen. And the text says this, and this is kind of funny. So it says, America 2022, unemployment is at 1%, crime is at an all-time low, and violence barely exists, which is funny because we're in 2022 and none of that is real. And then there's this super violent opening where it's like a bunch of violent montages of different purges over the years that have happened. You're here to assume that they happened after the first purge, experiment in Staten Island, all the subsequent nationwide purges. So you see like lots of violent imagery, and then they're playing some beautiful kind of classical music in the background, which is an interesting juxtaposition, which continues throughout this particular film because we're looking at the wealthy people and the violence as a juxtaposition to their position in society. We'll get into that later. So that's how it opens up. Then we see our favorite guy, our main guy, James Sandin, who is the dad in the movie. And we see him driving up this windy road, beautiful road, this double gated community. And you see as he's, on the phone and all the beautiful houses, the beautiful scenery. And he's just, listening to the radio about the fact that the purge is today, and you're kind of being put in this time where we're a few hours before purge day. He has these blue flowers on his dashboard that are basically the purge blue flowers that you put outside of your house to show that you are in support of the purge. So he's driving up. And he gets a call from someone he works with that's like, oh, you did it, sir. You did it. You did it. So basically what you're here to assume is that he is a salesman who sells these home security systems for the purge situation. And he sold the most in his company at this point in time. So he's driving. He's really excited. Gets home, sees Mary. They chat. He's like, we have exciting news. I'll tell you guys at dinner, blah, 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 blah. Mary just kind of seems like really pensive about the fact that it's purge day and she's preparing dinner. Then we get introduced to Zoe, and Mary and James have a conversation because she's like, Zoe's just being a bitch basically, and like you need to talk to her and stuff like that. Then we go to Zoe and her boyfriend Henry. Henry's upstairs. They're making out. They're like, it's really cringy. She's like, I love you. And he's like, everybody says I love you. Let's growl to say we love each other because it's our own special thing. So they like are growling at each other, and it's like really weird. And so he's just kind of talking to her. They're making out, and then they hear that her dad's home, so he sneaks out. And you're supposed to assume that he's going home before the purge starts.
Não, isso é muito tonto.
Vai.
Não.
Rosna, é o nosso jeito de dizer te amo. Tenta. Rosna.
So, boom. Then we go and we meet Charlie. And Charlie's like this strange little kid. He's like hiding in this crawl space, and he's like controlling his little, weird camera baby doll truck thing with the remote control. And he scares his mom with it. The baby doll truck camera thing is called Timmy. He's very creepy. But yeah, so he's controlling it, and then the mom's like, you're scaring me. Come help me set the table. So set the table, and, they have their moment talking, catching up, blah, blah, blah. Boom. We're at dinner now. This is, again, before purge time. They're eating dinner, and the dad's like, tell me about everyone's day. I want to hear about everyone's day. And, of course, Zoe's like, this is stupid.
Wait, you're dead.
I don't want to do this anymore.
And you can tell she's pouting about something. And the dad's just like, oh my God, this girl's insufferable. This is what it's like having a teenage daughter. Which I'm going to pause here because it's so tired and through having these like tropes of teenage daughters being this way. Like, yes, I feel like all teenagers are bitchy in some sense, but there's a reason why. And like, we never get more than a 2-dimensional depiction, specifically teenage girls in media. But that's just my 2 cents on it. But yeah, she's like, this is stupid. And then finally she's like, I did piano and I had a calc test. Fine, is that good? And then they go around and he basically tells them that he got a promotion and it's a big deal. And everyone's like, woo, yay. And then they start laughing and everyone's kind of having a good dinner. Then they hear the purge sound, which is the emergency whatever. Or I think someone's alarm goes off. And he's like, oh, I didn't realize it's that late. It's time to arm the house and secure the house for the purge. So they go into this control room. He puts on his, password. The entire house, all the windows, all the doors get reinforced with steel.
All right, Mr. Callie is starting his lockdown. Okay. We ready? All right, let's hit it.
So it seems like, the house is impenetrable, blah, blah, blah. And, they start watching, the news coverage of the purge. There's a purge announcement. And then Zoe's like, you know what? I'm going to be miserable in my own room by myself. So she leaves. And then Charlie gets up and he's like, why don't you guys purge? Like, why don't you guys purge? And they're like, well, we've never felt the need to purge, but we support it. And then Charlie's kind of questioning the existence of the purge. Like, is this ethical? Is this moral? Is this da-da-da-da? And his parents are like, you don't remember how it was before we had the purge, but this is the best thing that's ever happened to the community, blah, blah, blah. If we felt the need to purge, we would. And he's like, you would kill people? So there's this existential conversation happening by way of Charlie, because he's like, where is your heart really at? Are you stone cold murderers? Is this acceptable? Blah, 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 blah. Then we go to Zoe. Zoe's up in her room listening to music, laying in bed, and then someone comes from behind her and like pulls her down on the bed, and it's fucking Henry. He didn't actually leave to go to his house. He snuck back into the house before they armed the house, before the purge started, while they were eating dinner. And so they're making out, and she's like, my dad is gonna be so pissed. And he's like, well, he can't do anything now because the house is on lockdown or whatever, and the purge has started. So, they're doing their thing, and then he kind of pulls away. Like, it seems like things are getting hot and heavy, and he pulls away, and he's like, I didn't really come here for that. I came here to confront your dad about keeping us apart. He can't keep us apart. He can't keep us apart. Like, today is the day that I confront him man to man.
Your father.
What? Why?
It's time to straighten this out. He cannot forbid you from seeing me. No, that's crazy.
It might be crazy, but he's not going to change his mind. He thinks you're too old for me. Talking to him is only going to make him more angry, and he'll make it more difficult for us.
I promise. Everything is...
We come back downstairs, and Mary, like, gets James and is like, I heard gunshots. And, like, he's kind of like, relax. Like, there are going to be gunshots today. This is the purge after all. And she's like, but I didn't expect it in our community. And you kind of get that sense of, like, we're supposed to be protected. We're in the rich part of town type thing. So then time wears on. Charlie's at the monitors alone, and he sees this black guy screaming for help on their street. He's bleeding, he's screaming, he's pleading. No one's opening up their door. And this is that kind of thing where it's like they're deciding, is it worth it for me to open up the door? Is he going to kill us? Is this a trick? Da-da-da-da-da. So people aren't opening up their door. Then Charlie all of a sudden gets super, he's like, I can't take it anymore. So he disarms the door. He runs out, and he opens their front door and tells the guy to run. The dad's like, what the fuck? And then a whole commotion starts. Then the dad goes to arm the door back, and the guy's able to slip through the door. The dad has his gun, and there's a little bit of a confrontation. Now, here's where shit gets crazy. So Henry decides at this point to come downstairs with Zoe, and he's like, hey, Mr. Sandin. And he has a fucking gun pointed at him.
Mr. Sandin.
James, he has a gun.
At Zoe's dad. And his whole plan, you realize his whole plan the whole time was to wait until the purge so he could kill her dad so that they could be together. So he starts shooting at Mr. Sandin, and Mr. Sandin is shooting at Henry, and Zoe's able to get Henry to walk to her room. They like run away, stop shooting. All throughout all this commotion, of course, the black, not named stranger disappears in through the house because clearly he's running from something and he doesn't want to get thrown out. So he runs and disappears through the house. So now they're in this situation where they let a stranger in. They don't know his intentions. And Henry was shooting at the dad, and they didn't even know Henry was in the house. So it's this whole commotion. Charlie and the mom go downstairs. The dad decides to go look for Zoe and Henry to see if everything's okay. Blah, 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 blah. He sees Henry in Zoe's room. He's dead. He got shot. Kind of the cost of being the boss kind of thing. Like, if you really wanted to talk to him, why would you pull a gun out on him? You're unhinged, and maybe you did deserve to die, and you shouldn't have dated his daughter. You're not well. So he's dead. Henry's gone within the first 20 minutes. And then basically Zoe's missing throughout the house, and the dad's trying to find her while also trying to find this guy. The mom is in the room with Charlie. Then they hear Zoe. She talks to Zoe. Zoe's like, he died in my arms. I didn't know who was going to do that. So she's feeling super remorseful. Blah, blah, blah. And that happens. So Zoe is like, I'm just going to go by myself. I feel so bad. And so she runs off again. And the mom's freaking out because there's this, stranger in the house. So anyway, she hides. The dad, everyone's looking for Zoe. There's this whole commotion. The mom starts looking for her. Da, 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 da. And then Charlie is watching the monitor, and these people start showing up to their front doorstep. And it's all these people in those classic purge masks. You know the ones. You know what I'm talking about. And all of these people are kind of congregating on their front lawn. So Charlie calls for his mom. His mom sees it. And then the dad comes down eventually. And they're like, you need to see this. And so they're watching through the, front doorbell camera, this guy, standing at the top of the camera. They turn on the volume, and he's basically saying, I see, because you have your blue flowers out, that you support the purge. We obviously are purging too. It's within our rights as Americans, and you took what we were purging.
One of the halves. And your blue flowers tell me that you support the purge. We want to treat you fairly, so listen closely. Let me introduce us. We are some fine, young, very educated guys and gals. We've gotten gussied up in our most terrifying guises, as we do every year, ready to violate, annihilate, and cleanse our souls. But things took a turn. Our target escaped us, and several of your dear neighbors informed us that you, the Sandins, have inexplicably given him sanctuary. Mr. and Mrs. The man you're sheltering is nothing but a dirty homeless pig. A grotesque menace to our just society who had the audacity to fight back, killing one of us when we attempted to execute him tonight. The pig doesn't know his place, and now he needs to be taught a lesson. You need to return him to us. Alive.
You took the swine, the homeless swine that represents the bottom of society. You took him from us, and we are fully entitled to have him back so we can kill him. And he's just going on this whole rant about how they're the haves and the have-nots deserve to die. And there's a lot of racialized, classist language wrapped up in that conversation. And he basically is like, here's the deal. And this man looks crazy, cuckoo, crazy, bonkers. He's like, here's the deal. You are going to give us this man alive, or we are going to come into your house and kill all of you and purge all of you. He is like, you think you have this big bad security system and everything, honey, but at the end of the day, we have people with equipment that will be able to let us into this house. So you have until those people show up to deliver this man alive to us. And so there's a whole montage. There's a bunch of different montages of them trying to find the guy in the house and them trying to get the guy outside and all of this fucking stuff. And then where's Zoe? Then where's this? Then the guy takes Zoe hostage. Then Zoe gets unconscious because, he's trying to run away. It's just this whole back and forth about trying to get this guy in this time frame. And basically, they're tying him up. They finally beat him up enough to be able to tie him up and put him on a rolling chair, and they're going to deliver him outside to these people. And then Zoe, who was unconscious, wakes up, and the dad's like, oh, baby, we're just going to deliver him to the other people, and it'll all be fine. It'll all be fine. We're just going to give him, and we'll go back to normal. And she's like, we'll never be normal. Look what you're doing, da 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 da. So the kids are really the heart. The kids are the ethics in this situation because, Zoe was basically alluding to the fact that nothing will be the same if you decide to deliver this man to these people who are just trying to kill him because he's poor. And so the dad's like having second thoughts about stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, the people show up with the mechanical gear enough to be able to break through their security system. And the guy's basically like, you know what, time's up. We told you, we're disappointed, but we're coming in and we're killing all of you. So basically, Ethan Hawke, instead of trying to be like, just take him, he basically is like, you know what, we're going to fight. Everyone's going to stay here. We're not going to give this man up willingly. We're going to fight for our lives. Cue this entire fight montage that lasts kind of a while, where all the people that were creepy in the mask come in and everyone gets peeled off. Ethan Hawke is like now Rambo and is able to be like this stealth murderer killer when he's never participated in a purge at all. But anyway, so everyone's getting peeled off. Everyone finds everyone. Da 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 da. Then at the end of the fight scene, the main guy who is talking, who, is giving them the ultimatum about giving them the guy, basically sneaks up on Ethan Hawke, a.k.a. Mr. Sandin, and stabs him through the stomach with a blade, and is basically like, you finally purged. Don't you feel great? You purged. You killed people. Don't you feel great? Da-da-da-da-da. So then he's like, he's not completely dead yet. The guy leaves him to bleed out. All of this stuff is happening. And basically, the family's in a predicament. They are, really in dire straits. All of the mass people, the crazy people are coming in and attacking all of the kids. So Charlie gets pulled away from his gun. Zoe gets pulled away from her gun. The mom gets pulled away from her gun. And it's like, oh my gosh, they're all gonna die. And then the Mr. and Mrs. Mr. and Mrs. Fennan come into the house, and Mr. and Mrs. Halverson come into the house. And so they basically come in and start shooting up all of the crazy people in the house who are wearing masks, who are there to kill them. And, they gather all Ethan Hawke and all the entire family on the staircase. And, Mrs. Sandin is like, thank you for helping us, because they end up killing everybody. And then they're like, oh, no, don't thank us. We killed them because you are reserved for us to attack. We're killing you now.
Thank you. We saw that you were having some trouble. We decided to help you. Seemed as I don't know what to say. Don't thank us too much, Mary. The truth is, you're ours, not theirs. What do you mean ours? What do you mean ours? Dad? No, Dad! Wait!
So then they pull away Mr. Sandin, a.k.a. Ethan Hawke, and he's already dead from his stab wound. And then they tie up Mary Sandin, Zoe Sandin, and Charlie Sandin. And they're like, you guys were flaunting in our faces that you made so much money during this year. I told you no one did as good as you during this year. A lot of people think you got your wealth this year because of all the people in the community. Like, it was an envious thing. So they're, basically planning on killing the entire family as they're purged. And they're like, it's our turn to purge our hatred or purge our da-da-da. On this holiday, we're purging all of that. So basically, boom, they're in dire straits again by their neighbors this time, who they thought saved them. But, of course, there's one person still in the house that's still alive that is not affiliated with either side. He gets up. It's the, of course, black unnamed stranger. He shoots, I think it's Mr. Fernan, Grace's husband, dead, and then he basically, has the guns pointed at the Halversons and Grace Vernon, and is like, you know, what do you want me to do to Mary Sandin? And she's like, I just want peace for the end, until the end of the purge, till the purge ends. I don't want any killing. So he's holding them at gunpoint, basically waiting to run out the clock for the purge. Grace reaches for a gun, and then Mary basically breaks her nose with the butt of her gun. And she's like, why are you crazy? What's wrong with you? Like, just listen to directions. So then they wait out the clock.
Did you hear what I said? No more killing tonight! Is it that hard to understand?
And basically the purge ends, and she's like, finally, now get out of my fucking house. So they go and get out of her house, and she spared them for some reason, because I would want to fucking move if my neighbors came in trying to shoot me up, child, no. And then she turns to the unnamed black stranger and is like, thank you so much for saving us. Are you okay? Do you need anything? And he was like, I'm good, and just left. And that's basically the end of the movie. And then the credits come, and then there's all this news commentary about, you know, the purge and what happened, and this was the best purge that's ever happened, and all sorts of things like that. So it's pretty to the point, centered around this family, very good. I really enjoyed it. I hadn't seen it in years, and it still slapped. I was like, this is fucking a good-ass movie. But there's a lot in this that I want to talk about. So now let's get into the sociological commentary. Let's get into it. So when it comes to my sociological commentary, I have a few points that we're going to wrap this whole thing up with a bow. But this was, once again, a really good fucking movie. Like, The Purge is a solid movie. I think the acting was better than the first Purge that we watched last week. I think that, you know, just the performance was better. I like the idea of it being centered around a singular family. I liked it. It was really well done, and they were able to introduce a lot of the points that were extended and pulled out in the prequel in this movie. Remember, this movie came out in 2013. That movie came out in 2018. So they did a really good job of staying true to what the first movie was really trying to hint around. So I think the first point I want to make is this is the ideal family. This is the ideal family, white picket fence, wealthy white family with one boy, one girl, living in a gated community, wealthy guy, stay-at-home mom. Like, they are the epitome of the American dream. And they still get into the purge situation, because what you'll hear them say throughout before the purge starts is, you know, this doesn't happen in our community. We don't do this in our community, da-da-da-da-da. And then you hear expositional commentary, like when the man is driving up to his house, when the movie opens up, you hear on the radio that, you know, they're having a debate over if the purge is ethical on the radio. And one man's like, you know, it really is just a way to eradicate the poor, because the poor are the only group of people that cannot properly protect themselves during the purge. So it's open season on the poor, which leads the, you know, unemployment to go down and violent crimes to go down and all of these perceived terrible things of society to go down, because that population gets shaved down every year the purge happens, because they are the prey, and the wealthy people are, one, able to protect themselves, but two, able to hunt them for sport. So there's this conversation constantly happening in the background with news clips and stuff where they're pointing out the fact that there is a distinct difference between the haves and the have-nots, and this is a family of haves. So I think it's like such an juxtaposition, considering how violent it gets, and then it's in this beautiful neighborhood where none of this is supposed to be happening. The purge is supposed to happen elsewhere. It's not supposed to happen in this gated community in the suburbs. You know what I mean? Then on top of that, there's this conversation about the American dream and what that means and if it's real, because, you know, this guy, Ethan Hawke, aka James Sandin, was talking to his wife while they're doing the dishes, and he's like, can you believe it? Like, 10 years ago we were struggling to pay rent, and now I'm over here looking at buying boats. So their life is supposed to be representative of the American dream, right? And he pulled himself up by his bootstraps. He did everything that needed to be done. He has a security system. He lives in a wealthy part of the neighborhood, and he worked himself up to this position only for his neighbors to be envious of him and be plotting on killing his entire family during the purge, and his son to, have a heart and open up the door and not be a callous individual and save somebody, but which caused, obviously all the violence and ultimately led to his demise. So it's just really interesting. It's just really layered, and I love that. I love that about this movie. It was simple but complex. Here again, similar to in the first Purge, there is this conversation of the greater good, right? Because we swoop in and it's like America 2022. There's basically relatively no unemployment, no violent crimes anymore. Everyone is doing and prospering well, right? Societally. So the Purge as a national experiment that happened in the first Purge is clearly successful, because what was going on when the first Purge movie, the prequel, was going on was a lot of civil unrest, and there was lots of unemployment, and the country was headed down a bad path. And they open up this movie like everything's pretty much perfect, except for now every year we have a holiday, which is the Purge, where for 12 hours people are able to do whatever. And it's this conversation, again, of the greater good, like the sacrifice of some for the benefit of many. And remember, in that first video that I filmed, I talked about the greater good for whom. Like, let's expand what the greater good means. The greater good doesn't include me. The greater good doesn't include poor people, sick people, disabled people, queer people, people of color. The greater good is holding up and upholding the exact people who are a part of this family. White, upper middle class people who can afford to have the fortresses, who can afford to have all the guns and the firearms to be able to survive a violent night like the Purge night. What ends up ultimately happening is the people who get sacrificed for the greater good, which is white, heterosexual, Christian, wealthy, greater good, is the fact that, those people are the poor, the black, the queer, the marginalized, the homeless, which is what happens in that speech, that guy, when he's, asking for the stranger to come out alive and stuff out of the house. He basically is like, this guy's swine. He's not part of the haves. He's the exact representation of why we do the Purge, because he's not, successful. He's not white. He's all of these things, and he is the bane of our existence. He basically keeps calling this man swine, like a pig, like a creature, like not even human. And so you see this conversation of like, okay, but what is the greatest good? What is greater good? And who is the greater good for? And even though there's all of this generalized conversation around what the greater good is, and oh, look at the economics, and oh, look at how well our country's thriving now, the reality is this is just state-sanctioned violence, state-sanctioned genocide. It's open season one time a year for 12 hours on the poor, the unemployed, the people struggling in this society, so we can continue to fudge the numbers and say, oh, we're doing so well economically. Well, you're killing all the people who are homeless, who have drug problems, who live on the street, who would rob people on any other day except for the Purge. It's state-sanctioned genocide of people that are not valued by society, which is what happens in America. The criminalization of homelessness, the criminalization of mental health, the criminalization of drug abuse, the criminalization of, color of people's skin, all of that is state sanctioned for a reason. And it's it's state sanctioned genocide. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's state sanctioned genocide on the lives of people that are not valued in American society. And that's just point blank period the truth, which is why, white people have such a different experience with the police. And that's something that they keep up on purpose, because we live in two different realities. So when we're saying we're dying, they're killing us, they're like literally murdering us. This is literal genocide on our kind, on black men, on black women, on black people, on black trans people. Like, please help us. They're like, all they can say is, oh, well, the cops have never been mean to me, so that must not be true. You guys must have done something. It's crazy because this is supposed to take place in 2022, which I think is so funny because it's like America is worse for wear in 2022, honestly. But it's discussing the state-sanctioned violence, state-sanctioned genocide. But the reason why people separate the movie from the reality is because, not your average bear can't, shoot everybody up and not, and get away with it 12 hours in one day every year, like the Purge. But it's just the police. It's the policing system. It's the inner city. It's all of that kind of stuff that the government allows that is doing the exact same thing to people that look like me, people who whatever. So the Purge is here. It's just not here for a certain demographic of people yet. My next point is this concept of the ethics of capitalizing on violence, because you see this kind of conversation happening with Ethan Hawke's character, who is made his fortune by capitalizing off of the Purge's existence. So the Purge exists and he's able to make industry and has been able to build wealth for himself on the fact that there is this day where people just kill each other. Fuck the ethics of it. Fuck humanity. I'm making money. I'm a cold, hard capitalist and I'm making money off of this shit. I'm making money off of lives. The fear of losing your life, because he sells these home security systems. And then you see how, because he did so well coming into this industry, how the envy of the people around him comes to this breaking point where they basically plan on doing their own kind of vigilante justice on the family because they're so envious of the amount of money he's been able to amass by capitalizing on the Purge. So it kind of reminded me of the war industry and just like, the ethics of making money and wars, which to me doesn't make sense, because there is no incentive to not have a war if a bunch of people are able to become rich when wartime is happening. So it kind of reminded me a little bit of that, and the ethics of that and all of that in this country, because as we know, this country likes a war. This country not only likes a war, but likes a foreign 20-year plus war. And what a lot of people forget is that there's a whole industry behind that. There's a reason why these wars get dragged out. There's a reason why we're always in people's business and why we're always in a damn war, because people get really fucking rich during wartime. And it's sick and it's very cynical, but it's the truth. So I think my last point about this whole thing is one of the biggest points that's being made is this conversation about accepting the status quo and fighting against the status quo. There's this quote, I don't know if I'm even quoting it correctly, but it's the fact, inaction is an answer in and of itself. Like, you are on the opposing side if you're not doing anything. And this family is a definition of that. They support the Purge in terms of having their blue flowers out to protect their family, but at the same time, they don't participate in the Purge. So they think of themselves as a different caliber of person, because we don't actually kill people, but we do support the Purge because it has helped the quote-unquote greater good of society, meaning the white wealthy people that they live around. But it's this idea of riding the fence and not picking a side, and then they finally are forced to pick a side when their son allows this black man who's being literally tortured and killed by these white people who only look at him as swine. They're forced to pick a side, protect this man for the greater good of the conversation about humanity and the potential lesson taught to your kids, or sacrifice this person that you don't know who's going to be murdered innocently, and you know that, in the name of this holiday. So it kind of reminded me of, they're making inroads. There's a new differentiation between Republicans and MAGA Republicans in this country. And, you know, MAGA Republicans are supposed to be the extremist people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and those people that the QAnon folk and all of that kind of thing. But to me, the reality is you guys all supported Trump. You know what I mean? And so, yes, you're trying to make this distinction between the two of you, but you still supported Trump, and your inaction for Trump is what is opening us up to tyranny, potentially, voter fraud, potentially, all of these things, because you had no action when it came to the reality of the 2016 election. So I think that, you know, it's funny because this is 2013, so we're still in the Obama era of things. We're not even close to the 2016 election. But it's just so crazy that, you know, a lot of these sentiments and conversations are being had in this movie. And it's just, again, a masterpiece of sociological commentary. And I just, like, can't get enough of it. I'm so excited to get more into it in the next following weeks. But, yeah, those are my points on the Purge movie, not the first Purge, but the literal first Purge, the 2013 rendition of the movie. It was incredible from start to finish. Highly, highly recommend. Loved it. You can watch it on HBO Max if you're curious, and it's a little under an hour and a half. So really quick, really easy watch. Highly, highly recommend. I guess what I want to say is, you know, if you're new here, welcome. Hi, I hope you love the content. There is a ton of true crime videos, so you can catch up on my point of view on those types of things. I have a ton of content for you guys to catch up on. But I hope you like this content, and we will be doing this every October, where we'll take down a horror franchise and go through it with a fine-tooth comb. I hope you enjoyed this. There are many more. There's 3 more movies slated for the rest of October, so I hope you love it. Like and comment on the video, subscribe to my channel, hit that bell notification so that you're notified anytime I put out a new video. And I do videos weekly, just so you know. For those returning people, I love you. Thank you for returning. Thank you for watching. Kiss, kiss, hug, hug. I hope you enjoyed it. Comment and like the video. And you both had better watch my ads in this whole thing. My eyes on you. That being said, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're enjoying this series. But yeah, all I have to say is Black Lives Matter and Free Palestine until it's backwards.